Hello everybody, welcome back to another video where I talk over a game, and this time it's a different game, you'll notice, and that is because the topic is about this game. Now, a while ago I did a video on having played Fields of Mistria for a while, and I wanted to kind of give a review of how I had experienced it, and I think there I also mentioned that people didn't even mention your birthday and stuff like that, and then I just kind of left it alone. But then a couple of days ago I was like revisiting that thought process, I guess you would call that. Just trying to figure out what exactly about the game made me stop playing it, because I have it sitting on my desktop still, the shortcut, and I occasionally think about maybe firing it up, and then I go, not really. And I wondered why that was. And after a while, I had to conclude that actually it reminds me a lot of masking, and I'm going to go into why I think that, obviously, because I need to make a video on this, mostly to get it out of my system, but maybe there are other people that also feel the same way and don't really know why, and maybe it's for the same reason. So, Fields of Mistria, for those who don't know, the story basically goes, there was this town, and it got hit by an earthquake, a bunch of stuff got destroyed, and they're not doing great because apparently in their country or in their nation, every town gets a certain ranking, and the ranking, I guess, also determines how much aid you get or something from the government or the crown or the capital. I don't know. But either way, they wanted to get their town rank back up. They didn't have a lot of resources to do that, so they put up this piece of land for sale, basically an old farm. And if you are an adventurer slash person who likes to build stuff, then you were able to get that farm basically for free, if as long as you helped rebuild the town. That was basically the catch, so to speak. So your character has responded to that ad. You come for the farm and you stay for fixing the town, because that is the tit for tat situation. You get the farm, you fix the town, that type of thing. So okay. That doesn't sound like a bad deal. Who wouldn't want a piece of land in the country with some nice trees and stuff on it, and you can put some animals on it and everything. Everything is very cutesy. If you want, you can grow some crops. If you don't want, you don't have to do that. That type of thing. It's fine. And in that sense, it also has a lot of Stardew Valley-like vibes, because of course you get the farm and you don't really have to farm there. You just have to do stuff. You don't even have to do that. If you want to sit inside your house for like 10 years and not do anything, the town runs just fine without you and all that sort of thing. In Stardew Valley anyway. But it's kind of supposed that you will do something with the farm eventually, and most people do. Anyway, so I set about on the farm in Fields of Mistria, just kind of like doing the quests and stuff like that, and they got increasingly worse, and I just went around and did the things, chopped up all the stone, cut down all the trees, and gathered all the resources, get all the money, throw it in a box. Then you get a little cutscene where they fix the thing, and then you get like a day of nothing, and then another mail ends up in your mailbox about the next thing they want you to fix, and then it just keeps on going like that. And it's been, I want to say, a little over 4 months since I last played it, and when I last played it, I had actually completed all the initial town repair quests, and we had reached Ruby level, I think, and I haven't actually loaded it up since, so it could be that there have been patches in the meantime that have made the things better than they were, and maybe some of the things that drove me away from the game have now been fixed. Of course, the issue with that is if there are other people like me feeling the same things, they've already felt the things, and they are unlikely to come back and notice that there has been a patch. So those people are already kind of lost. I might fire it back up again to see if anything has changed or anything. But the main gripe I had was that the town doesn't seem to care that you're there. Like at the start of the game, when you create your first character, or just any character basically, you get to pick your birth date. So your character has a birth date. But then on that particular day in game, nobody cares, nobody knows, nobody says anything, you don't get any mail, none of that. None of that's happening. All of the quests for fixing the town seem very one-sided, in the sense that these people all come together to discuss exactly what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be gathering, and what you're going to be contributing. And then they'll go and do their own thing and wait for you to do your parts. And then there's maybe a cutscene where Reese and Mars pound away at something. And then they'll stand around and congratulate themselves on the job well done. And like I said, that was like the deal. You got the farm, you have to do the fixing. Okay, so far so good. Then you start to notice things like whenever you have one of those quest dialogues, when they introduce the next thing that they want to repair, there are only really like 2 things you can choose from every time you have to choose a dialogue option. And basically all options are either yes, I'll do that, or yes, I'll do that with extra steps. But there's nothing really to show your own character or disagree with anything like that. It's, yes, I'm going to do this. Or it's, yes, I'm going to do this, and I'll do this extra thing as well because I like you all so very much, blah, blah, blah. And I get annoyed when everything is positive because that's just not realistic. The only time you get a somewhat negative dialogue option, I think, is a couple of times when you're in a cutscene with Mars and Mars wants to hide the fact that he's been an asshat towards you in front of other people, and then you get the option to say, actually, Mars has been really mean to me, and something like that. But I kind of think that's kind of silly to do. So in those cases, actually, I think it stings more to be friendly and positive. So I usually pick those options then specifically. But okay, so those are a couple of options that happen. When it really starts to break down for me is the Friday games nights, where they basically say, oh, come over on Friday, it's going to be so much fun, we're going to play a bunch of games, you should definitely hang out. And then you go there, and all that really happens is you're standing around listening and watching other people have a great time. And then you move on to the next group and stand around and listen and watch them have a good time. And then you go on to the next group and watch them talk about how they're having a great time. But it's kind of like you're a fly on the wall. You're not really involved. You're not really doing anything. And one day I actually walked in when it wasn't Friday, and there was a little group there sitting, having some type of soup. And they're like, oh, you should definitely grab a bowl and join us. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do that. Then I grabbed the bowl at that communal soup bowl thing, and I couldn't even sit down. And then I got this like mental image of being back in like middle school, and the popular kids have just like jokingly invited you to come sit at their table, and then as soon as you're like in position to like grab a chair, oh, suddenly there's no chairs available at their table, and oh, sorry, I thought you could sit here, guess you'll have to find another spot, you don't mind, do you? Like that type of behavior felt very awkward, so I immediately left. So when I remembered that a couple of days ago, like how awkward that was, I thought back to all the times that I had dialogue options and how they were mostly not things that I would say. And then it kind of clicked, like it's usually that way when you're out and about in the real world and you want to say a certain thing that you know is not acceptable, so you have to pick the sugar sweet option in order for people to like you. But that also means that they never really know what you're like if you keep doing that, because you have learned over the years to not say or do certain things because that has a negative effect. So you put on this persona, you're masking in front of all these other people in order to be considered somewhat acceptable to have around in society, like that type of thing. And then that ties into nobody knowing it's your birthday, and also not having the option to tell anybody it's your birthday, because at least I've always experienced like whenever I had to say like, oh, I actually also want this or that, or oh, hey, it's also my birthday. It's really, really awkward to do that because it kind of feels like you're trying to draw attention. And that's exactly what most people on the spectrum try to avoid, drawing unnecessary attention. So you just kind of like swallow it and move on. And nobody's ever really real towards you. You're just kind of on the outside looking in, like I said, with the games night. That's also how I kind of feel like a lot of times in real life as well. There's all these people that I think would be fun to hang out with, but then I have to stop and think to myself, like, would they actually like me, or do I have to pretend to be somebody else in order to hang out with them? And what good would that do? Because obviously they're not really hanging out with you if you're pretending to be something that you think is more acceptable in their eyes. And after a while, that gets really tiring, and I found myself not feeling involved, included, or even a part of the town in Fields of Mistria, and I didn't really have that experience with Stardew Valley. Maybe also because there are a bunch of people in Stardew Valley who also have some very real issues and some very grumpy personalities occasionally, like Shane comes to mind, obviously, but also Sebastian can be very standoffish. Haley at the start as well. And that kind of adds a certain spice. Oh, and also Maru. I don't really like Maru, but the fact that she is the way that she is, like she's very much, well, I wouldn't say full of herself, but she does consider herself to be the smartest person in town, and that kind of can rub people the wrong way. But anyway, so the fact that there are people out there actually just saying things that are not super positive all the time somehow makes it more inviting, because it also means that you can say things that are kind of off color occasionally, because apparently that's acceptable. But in Fields of Mistria, apparently not. At least the way that they talk to each other is also very sugary sweet, and I just don't feel like that there is like this in for us as the player. Unless you really put on blinders and pretend not to see any of that. Also with romance options, I noticed, at least when I last played the game, that there are a couple of characters who tend to be into each other, but they are also romanceable options. like that bathhouse person, Juniper I think her name is, and Dr. Villain, they tend to speak to each other in certain ways, particularly on the Friday night game night stuff. That makes me think that they're also kind of already a couple behind the scenes. So it'd be very awkward if you started to romance one of them, because then you're kind of like breaking up another relationship. Same thing with Mars and Reese, because Mars at least seems to be very interested in Reese. Maybe because Reese is a really good carpenter, but also I think there's more to it than that. Haven't really looked too closely into the other potential pairings in town, but I imagine that there's very similar vibes going on there. I have heard people talk about Hayden and how he's in some type of love triangle with somebody else, and I would hate to be the one to break up a budding relationship. And basically, I already have that issue a little bit with Stardew Valley, where you kind of know that people are sort of kind of supposed to end up together eventually because you see them dancing together at the flower dance. Except for Shane and Emily, I suppose. Those aren't necessarily in each other's bullseyes, although they do see each other a lot at the bar, but still. But there is enough distance between the two potential mates, I guess you would call that, for a player to see themselves charming them in time for any other relationship to start budding between them, like that type of thing. So I feel like there is just something off about the way that people interact in Fields of Mistria that feels to me like I'm basically doing the same thing that I'm doing in real life, which is kind of not the point of playing a cozy game for me anyway, because it's kind of supposed to be this suspending disbelief, alternate reality type thing where things are better than they are in real life. Most games are like that, or supposed to be like that. And I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people who play the game who have never had any of these experiences and have perfectly good times playing with their capybaras and I don't know what else. But for me, I don't know, it just kind of was off-putting. I only loaded up the game so I could have some background stuff going while you're listening to me complain about the game that you're watching. Probably won't play it too much after unless there does happen to be a patch that's made it so much better, but I kind of doubt it because obviously it's such vague feedback that I don't think that the developers would be able to do too much about it. Maybe change some dialogue options or something, but for now, I'm guessing I'm only going to occasionally pop in until I see some actual changes that make it more fun. But that is my thought process on Fields of Mistria. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you think of the game, if you've ever played it, or what your thoughts are on cozy games like this in general. I like to hear from you guys. I don't hear enough from you guys. Let me know what you're thinking, and I hope to see you in another video. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.